Come up with the idea.
College.
And all the neighbors would come.
The photographer says, I need someone to walk through this. I have an idea.
Yup, guitar. Did he ever?
Stuffed animals.
He would laugh when I would do Shakespeare or something.
Kind of got to that place.
We finished the scene.
Hello, I'm Martin Landau. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I had aspirations as a kid. First things I did, I used to draw, and I got a job on a newspaper drawing stuff, so I just brought a couple of my drawings along with me today. And I worked at the newspaper for a while and really enjoyed it, and then they were going to promote me into a job that I knew would be a cushy job and a good one, so I quit. You say, why did I quit? Well, I quit because I wanted to be an actor. Well, pretty early on, interestingly, but a couple of detours along the way. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and paid attention to a lot of first generation, second generation Americans, and was always interested. You know, Brooklyn is known as a city of churches. It's another name for it. It's practically got a church on every corner and every denomination and you can think of. You know, I had Greek Orthodox friends, I had Russian Orthodox friends, I had Methodist friends, Episcopalian friends, Baptist friends, Jewish friends, Catholic friends, and on. And if you look at my graduation picture from elementary school, it looks like the United Nations. Well, when I was really little, even before I could read, my parents would go out on a Saturday night. New York in those days had 7 newspapers. And they'd bring back 3 or 4 comic sections, the Daily Mirror, the Journal American, the Daily News, and Herald Tribune, all had Sunday color comics. And they would leave the comics next to my bed so that Sunday morning I'd have something to do and not wake them up. And so I became immersed in all of these crazy worlds that these comics afforded me. I couldn't read yet, I mean, but there was Crazy Cat and Smokey Stover and Dick Tracy and Mickey Mouse, and on it went, you know, Maggie and Jiggs and Bringing Up Father. And it fascinated me, so I started to draw at a very early age. And the next thing I knew, I went to high school after elementary school, and I was a cartoonist on the Highwayman, the James Madison newspaper, high school newspaper. And then when I was 17, I got a job on the New York Daily News. I just bringing a portfolio of my work. I told them I was 18, and they hired me. And I illustrated Billy Rose's column, Pitching Horseshoes, and I did a comic strip. And anyway, I would get to the news. I'd leave high school at 3 in the afternoon, get to the news at 4, and work till midnight, did my homework on the train. Why I did all of this, I don't know. To this day, I look back, I said, what drove me? But, so, I mean, one of my first influences was comics, and I became a comic artist. But at the same time, my mother took me to the movies when I was 6 years old, and living in New York, I saw operettas like the White Horse Inn at the Center Theater, or Jumbo with Jimmy Durante and an elephant, and elevated trains, which were, you know, there were dark streets and noisy streets. So walking into these magical places like the Center Theater, which was built at the same time Radio City Music Hall was built, it was a smaller version of the music hall, but for legitimate theater, and large enough for musicals and operettas. And they were the first places that I ever walked into that had air conditioning, because that was a new concept. Prior to that, the theaters were called air cooled. They had a block of ice and they'd run a fan through them. So coming in off those hot New York streets and walking into these magical places where these amazing things took place on, you know, rainstorms on the stage and all kinds of things, tap dancers and, excuse me. So the two things that fascinated me is oddly, overly simplistic were artwork, which I still do, and theater and film. Well, I was being groomed at the Daily News to become the theatrical caricaturist at one point. I'd been there several years now, and an older English fellow called Horace Knight was retiring. And I was being groomed. I could do caricatures, and I had a style which was kind of an Art Deco style. In fact, I brought a couple of things with me. I knew if I got that job, I'd never leave. And I wanted to leave, ultimately. I wanted to go into the theater. So I quit prior to getting that job. In fact, a crony of mine, a good friend, Bill Gallo, who just celebrated his 65th year at the Daily News, is a sports cartoonist, and he's still there.
Well, a lot of that story is based on my life
And of course, my family jumped up and down with joy when I told them that I wanted to be an unemployed actor. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do, and I proceeded. So I quit. You did what? You did what? Anyway, that's what I heard a lot. And I said, yeah, I quit. In fact, when I quit, Bill White was a fellow I had. He said, what do you mean you want to quit? I said, well, can I leave now, or do I have to give you notice? And he said, well, no, you can't just walk out. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going into the theater. I think he thought I got a job as an usher somewhere. I mean, anyway, but I did quit, and I, went away to summer stock and did 12 shows in 13 weeks without any training. A musical, a straight play, a musical, straight. Peaks Island, Maine, which was an island 2 miles outside of Portland. A great old summer theater, which is no longer. And came back and started studying seriously. I look back now, and I mean, why I got the job at the News in the first place. I mean, my parents were not wealthy, but I didn't have to go to work, but I wanted to. Something drove me to that. The BMT subway. Anyway, and then I just needed to do it. I mean, as I look back, I said, it's outlandish and it's sort of insane, really. I looked up teachers, and Kurt Conway was someone recommended to me. He had been with the group theater, which, was a very innovative theater. He was one of the young fellows at that time, where Odets and Lee Strasberg and all of, Kazan. They were people who influenced the theater, the changes in the theater, the ensemble work, and the kinds of plays that were being written. The Theater Guild up until that point had done theater that wasn't really related to what was going on in the world. Anyway, Kurt was a blacklisted television director. He had just been fired from CBS. He was married to an obscure actress called Kim Stanley, who, when he married her, was obscure. And, of course, that marriage was a little rocky after that. But what was a blessing for me was kind of, I guess, a bit of hell for him, because he had to teach to make a living, and to my good fortune. And he was a terrific teacher, and I paid a lot of attention to the stuff he was telling me and applying it, and I began to work very hard and seriously on the stuff that Stanislavski had procreated prior to that, and all of these people that I mentioned before were influenced by the Russian theater at that point. And then I auditioned for the Actors Studio after I felt ready. And that year, 2000 auditioned, and only 2 people were accepted. Steve McQueen and myself were the only 2. So, and the final auditions, having done the preliminary audition, was Elia Kazan, Lee Strasberg, and Cheryl Crawford. And you had to get 1. 2 meant come back in a year, and 3 meant see you later. You had to get 3 ones to be accepted, and much to my surprise, I got in on my first audition. Now, Dustin Hoffman says he got in on his 9th, but I think it was only his 6th. Geraldine Page got in on her 6th, and Gene Hackman got in his 5th, and Bobby Duvall got on in his 4th or 5th. So it wasn't easy, and I was very fortunate, and I did a scene that, but I felt, everyone told me not to do that scene, but I felt if I couldn't do that scene, I didn't deserve to be in the studio. live television is beginning, and I'm doing... Basically, my training was for the theater, and in those days, actors... television was brand new. It was before tape, and kinescopes were pretty primitive. They would... In fact, the coaxial cable didn't exist yet, so a show that was... they had towers. A television band can't bend, so you'd have to pick up another tower, would have to pick it up and bend it down, and then it would go off the side of the earth. So the shows that were emanating from New York went as far as Chicago. They didn't go to the coast because they weren't able to. That's what I teach. Now, a drunk doesn't try to be drunk. He tries to be seen. What's another drink? The most studied thing in the world is a drunk with a full glass bringing it to his mouth. Whoops. Anyway, I'm going to put that down. Oh, there's an extra class here. Anyway, so it's fascinating stuff,
We were just getting it
Working in construction. My mom and dad.
dances, but I was like going up.
There were bumps along the way, of course. Life is not easy. But I enjoyed every minute of it, I'm not one of those guys who say, I should have, I could have, I should have, I could have, and a shovel will dig you a hole. Over the years I've taught acting as well as acted, and I learned along the way that all an audience wants to believe is that what's going on up there on the screen or on the stage is happening for the first time ever. Now, you got a script, you got words that, to keep it improvisational and make it look like it's really going on now is really what a good actor does. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of them do that. But it's been terrific, and I've done, something like 150 movies and 300, 400 television shows, and I'll keep doing it till I get it right. Not only that, Lee Strasberg encouraged me to teach when I was in my 20s, which he didn't do with anybody at that time. It was long before the Strasberg Institutes. And I began to teach in New York. I was in my 20s, and there were people in their 30s and 40s studying acting with me. And over the years, Jack Nicholson was my student for 3 years. Oliver Stone studied with me before he directed his first movie. Angelica Houston, Harry Dean Stanton, Shirley. Lots of people have studied acting with me. So all the time I was teaching, I wasn't making a living teaching because other teachers hated me because I charged so little, because I realized that people who needed it couldn't afford it. But I also, in teaching, I also had to practice what I preached. If I set a standard for them and I didn't fulfill that standard, the room would have been empty. No one would come back. And I had to represent what I was telling them to do, whether it was a kind of frivolous television show or a major motion picture. I still worked as hard I still do. And I've never met two people in life who were alike. Therefore, why would I repeat a performance? Because that character's predilections and the significance of why he's in that particular piece and what his function is has to be different from the last one I did. It's about a sculptor. Beautiful elephant, and a drunk comes up and says, "How do you do that? How do you do that?" And he says, "Shh." I says, "I'm just perfecting this a little bit. I'm that's a beautiful elephant. How do you do that?" He says, "Look, if I hit this wrong, I can shatter the whole thing. Would you please be? Don't get nasty with me. Just okay. If I tell you, will you go away?" He says, "Okay, I promise." He says, "Well, you get a great big square piece of marble and you chip away everything that doesn't look like an elephant. I chip away everything that doesn't look like the character. the things that are important are your availability. You know, no one tries to cry except bad actors. No one tries to laugh except bad actors. No one plays drunk except bad actors. People try not to cry. You fill up and you do what people do, which is hold on, and how stuff slips out. You know, that's when an audience says, cry, damn it, cry. No one tries to laugh. You know, if I tell you a joke and it's funny, that's one thing. But if I tell you the same joke 10 times in a day, and you've got to find the laughter and the visibility each time, that's what I teach. So it's fascinating stuff, you know. I mean, and you get it's the more complicated a character is, the more interesting I am, I think. I mean, the more I enjoy it, and the more layers and levels, you know. Dialogue, what people say to each other in the context of a script, is what a character is willing to share with another character, what he's willing to reveal to another character. The 90% he isn't is what I do for a living. All an audience wants to believe is what's going on between two or more people is happening for the first time ever. And that's what a good actor has to create. Not they, you want to see the rehearsal, the snickness, the goodness. You know, there were a lot of actors who were considered good actors who were not good actors. I mean, you see the rehearsals, you see the... It's not like it's coming out of the moment. And that it should look improvisational. But that's part of it, you know, and then there are things that are shown often that should be turned into guitar picks. But there are, you know, I've been fortunate in certain ways in getting some roles over the years that are really special and complicated and fun.
We were just getting into
Construction. My mom and dad,
but light
Discipline for them.
going up.
You know, at my age, I'm very fortunate because I'm still working and being hired. I recently did a movie with Ellen Burstyn called Lovely Still. It's a special movie because it's got a surprise ending and knock your socks off. And then I'm going to start a movie with Jennifer Lopez, which is a sort of a film noir kind of movie. And then Doug Ellen calls me when I'm in town and asks if I want to do Entourage, which I have done a number of, and I have fun with those young guys. And anyway, I'm busy. Well, I mean, there were several films that I felt were some of my best work that no one's ever seen and won't slip through the cracks. I mean, some of them never even made it to DVD. But that's part of it, you know. And then there are things that are shown often that should be turned into guitar picks. But there are, you know, I've been fortunate in certain ways in getting some roles over the years that are really special and complicated and fun. You know, it's hard or somewhat audacious of me to say, well, I mean, this particular performance will live on because, you know, I mean, in 10 years, I'm sure there are younger people around who won't know who Marlon Brando is. You know, I mean, it's interesting because when I did Ed Wood, if I had done it 20 years earlier, I could have gotten away with more, which I wouldn't have. But I mean, I even told Tim Burton, I said, after 5 minutes, if they're still saying Landau's doing a good job, we don't have a movie. They've got to believe it's Bela Lugosi. And at that point, you could go into any video store, and in the horror section, you had a plethora of Lugosi movies. So, I mean, people, you know, I mean, prior to that, you'd have to stay up till 2 in the morning to see one of those late shows, you know, where you just happen to see Dracula or Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn Gorilla or something, which is, you know, that last one makes Ed Wood's movie look like Gone with the Wind. Well, Crimes and Misdemeanors is one, you know, and it's one of Woody's better films. I mean, some people say it's his best film, and I didn't want you to feel it was an actor playing a part in that. I mean, I like a degree of theatricality in my work from time to time because I think it's fun and it elevates it a little. With Ed Wood, there was a, you know, with Tim particularly, there's an elevation. The reality is not quite kitchen sink and meat and potatoes. I mean, there's an extra thing there, and you know, Lugosi was theatrical, but I added a little more panache and stuff. But with Crimes and Misdemeanors, I said to Woody, I said, if you see any trace of an actor, stop me. No. And Woody doesn't direct. You direct totally on your own. I mean, completely. You know, he'll talk about the Rangers or the Knicks or the Mets, but he won't talk about the character. But most directors, a good director creates a playground. You cast the right actor, you let him play, because stuff will come out that even a director in his wildest imagination could never envision. And a lot of people have said this, but 90% of directing is casting. Cast the right person, open the door, and let them fly. And they can't go wrong because they've got all the elements. But I haven't, I mean, this may sound ostentatious, but I haven't been directed in 30 years by anybody. I come in with stuff, I figure if they don't like it, they'll tell me, and they don't tell me, so I just do it. Well, I mean, yeah, because I mean, you know, I mean, if you're, hypothetically, if you're casting a gangster movie, well, if you hire Joe Pesci, you know pretty much what the parameters are, or Danny Aiello, right? But if you hire me, you don't know what you're gonna get, you know? You know what I'm saying? It'll be something. It could be an Irish gangster, a certain kind of guy, you know? Hey, behave yourself. Do yourself a favor. Stay the hell out of this, huh? Or the Italian guy, the warrior, hey. If I was you, I wouldn't ignore everything I'm saying, you know? Because, so what I'm saying is that a director who's a little bit adventurous will hire me, because he's not going to exactly know what he's going to get, but he's going to get something, you know?